Welcome to For Real. It's time to communicate and get real about relationships with your host, Liesel Daisley, and psychologist, Krisnan Hurdle. So join us for real. Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of For Real. I'm your host, Liesel Daisley, and joining me as usual is our by now resident life coach and psychologist, Krisnan Hurdle. Welcome, Krisnan.
Thank you, Liesel. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I am doing well.
Nice. Well, last week we had a really interesting conversation and we got lots of feedback, lots of questions, and people wanted more. So we're going to give you more. Today we're going to be talking about sex, baby.
Sex, some more sex.
Yes. So this is going to be, I guess, a part 2 in our series, and we're just going to follow up with some questions for you, Krisnan.
Sure.
All set?
Ready to go.
All right, let's do this. My first question to you. What does sex tell you not only about yourself, but about your relationship?
Okay, very good question. Sex is an indicator of the health of the relationship.
Okay.
Right? And whether the level of intimacy between the partners, how close you feel that you are to each other. Because in sex there's supposed to be communication.
That's true.
In sex there's also a level of openness, which is about intimacy. And the level of attraction, which is the magnetism between the two partners, as well as where they are at in their process of relationship as well.
Okay.
Is determined or can be identified, can be indicated by their sexual life, their sexual sex relationship.
Okay.
Right? Or we call it sex life. So sex is an indicator of intimacy, is an indicator of attraction, is an indicator of closeness, and it's also an indicator of communication. Now, people can also not have the best relationship, but they can still be having sex. But obviously, there is some level of holding back that might occur, where there might be, in some cases, depending on the level of the relationship, there might be aggression because of the quality of the relationship, or there might be a holding back where they're really not letting go and really not opening up.
Okay.
So those are some markers and indicators we can look for. But sex also tells us about ourselves. And one of the things that it tells us is how our level of vitality.
Okay.
And your sexual energy, the energy coming from your sexual reproductive system speaks to your life vitality. In some other parts of the world, it is clearly identified and believed that the energy, as I mentioned in the last episode, the energy from the sex, from the root chakra or the sexual zone comes up and transmutes and converts to the energy going up through the body, throughout the rest of the body.
Okay.
And so it is like a generator which generates and supplies energy to the rest of the body. So it can tell you about your vitality, and even at an old age, people can know how well and lively or alive they feel by their level of sexual interest, not just sexual interest, but sexual performance and their sexual openness. I guess you could say their level of horniness.
Yeah, we'll make it a word for today.
Right. But yes, it is an indicator of our life vitality.
Okay. Now, I'm glad you mentioned the word vitality, because some people do have a high sex drive and some people have a very low sex drive. And there are those that would have maybe when they were younger had a higher sex drive, and as they got older, they found that tapered off. Now, what can one do in a situation where they find themselves with a low sex drive?
I think that, first of all, sex drive is an indicator of different things. It might be a level of the attraction in the relationship, where the relationship is at.
Okay.
It may also have something to do with your hormones, the production of your hormones, the release of hormones, as well as your diet, and your level of exercise. It may be an indicator of those things.
Okay.
But your sex drive is your sexual, as we call it, your sexual energy, your degree of interest in sex, your degree of feeling like being sexually active. And sex drive is not just something, well, it can be measured by previous times in your life. For example, when you were younger, when your hormones started acting up, you can identify how active or how strong your sex drive is. But sometimes some people have been through trauma, or they've been given beliefs, maybe by religious systems or adults or authority figures, which could make them have a dislike for sex. So the sex drive is about how much you care about sex or are interested in sex, and you feel sexual arousal and sexual interest. And so while a person might have a low sex drive because of those things I mentioned before, maybe trauma, maybe because of their mind being turned off and having repulsion because of beliefs. But it might also happen, as I would have probably mentioned, the level of relationship, how the person's relating to each other. Yes. The person might find that their drive is dwindling because the attraction, the magnetism isn't there, but also because of hormones. Yeah. So it's important to eat well, try to exercise, but also to work on the quality of the relationship, because as the lifetime of the relationship goes on, persons might begin to neglect things that they used to do when they were in the honeymoon and the spark of the relationship, and they can find themselves just going through monotony. So we want to always, while we're checking in with our body, we also want to check in with the relationship and make sure that it is at a level where there's still a spark and we are still interested and attracted to each other. Yeah, it requires work. Yeah, it does require work. Relationships are work. And so, and they say sex begins in the kitchen. So the amount of effort that persons are putting into the relationship outside of the bedroom, it does show in the bedroom. Okay. Yeah. Now these days, I recognize that STDs are on the up and up. Now, if a person contracts an STD, do you think it's wise for them to still have sexual relations? Right. It is possible to still be sexually active. The first thing you should do is, if you're in a relationship, you should tell your partner. And if you're going into a relationship, you should be extremely transparent. You should let your potential partner know, or prospective partner know. Agreed. That's very, very important. Agreed. Because it will affect things like whether you are going to have protected sex, or whether you're going to be unprotected sex. Unprotected sex. So your partner should know. It might also affect decisions like whether you're going to have a child. Depending on the infection, it might affect your ability to have children, but it might also be, like for instances like HIV or AIDS, it might affect your actual immune system and your lifespan. And so you want to for sure communicate this issue with your partner. But once that is done, there are lots of different medications out there that can be used to, if it isn't an infection that can be cured, or that there is remedies for, then we want to manage it. So we want to reduce the symptoms so that it might not be transferable if the symptoms are manageable, because there are some, like herpes, once it isn't active, you can still have sexual activity and not transfer it. Okay. And then you also want to obviously be aware of your body and when there are changes. So if your body is changing and the virus is acting up or is active, you want to, of course, cover up. And if not cover up, reduce or limit sexual activity during those times. Okay. Because there are some STIs which focus on certain areas. So, for example, it might be orally spread. It might be some are spread through the sexual reproductive organs, or by transfer of fluids during sex, during intercourse. So we want to know. You want to know exactly the terms or the characteristics of the infection that you have.
Right.
And you want to be vigilant in your body so that you aren't transferring it, and have an understanding with your partner about what you can do, what they want, if they want to be in a relationship, first of all, if what you're going to do to manage the situation and to prevent transfer.
Yeah, because it's important to protect the other person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our episode. It was such a pleasure having you join us. I hope that you were able to learn a lot from this session today. I know I certainly did. Thank you so much, Krisnan.
You're welcome.
So once again, it was a pleasure to have you join us, and we look forward to having you back on another episode of For Real.